Hi, and welcome to Metaverse Brands. I'm your host, Stephen DiPianco. Today, we're welcoming Nic Hill from Sawhorse Productions. Nic and his team have built super innovative and popular experiences on Roblox with amazing brand partners such as Alo Yoga, Netflix's Stranger Things, Tommy Hilfiger, and even Sir Elton John. In this episode, we talk about how the lines between film and video games are blurring, how he and his team combine professionals from the worlds of film and gaming to create magic, and the importance of thinking outside the box and being bold. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation, but first I just want to thank everybody who's been listening to the podcast, sharing their feedback. If you're enjoying it, please be sure to subscribe, like, rate it, leave a review, all that good stuff. Share it with your friends. And if you want to keep up with new episodes and learn more about the space, about Roblox and brands, be sure to go to my website, metaversemarcom.io, where you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Nic. All right, I'd like to welcome Nic Hill to Metaverse Brands. Nic, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've been listening since you launched.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I was excited when you messaged me about that. And I've been a fan of your work. Something that really caught my eye at the very beginning was the work with Alo Yoga. I couldn't figure out who it was, but when I did and I connected with you, I was super excited about it. So yeah, excited to talk more about that and some of your other work. So you're with Sawhorse. Can you just tell us what Sawhorse is and what you do there?
So I'm the co-founder of Sawhorse Productions. We started about 10 years ago, and we're a digital content studio. So we've been working in the traditional digital branded space. So we help brands create content, whether that be branded content or commercials, pre-roll ads, broadcast spots, whatever it may be. We've been creating that media for about 10 years. And just in the past year, we got into metaverse creation. So we were basically working with brands and agencies and figuring out how to tell their story in a more immersive way. Because in the past, it was just 2D linear video. And now it's immersive 3D worlds.
That seems like a huge jump, right? To be going from shooting video to now you're basically like designing games, experiences, etc. And so like, what made you pull the trigger and do that? Because that seems like a big business decision to say, hey, we should go in this direction.
Yeah, it is quite a change, and I think it's interesting that it took me a while to realize it, and I had to look back at my past. But when I was younger, I grew up being a gamer, so I loved video games when I was growing up. But at that time, the film world and the video game world were so separate. So I used to play games all the time. I used to make little videos with my friends when I was young. And half of my friends kind of went to school, graduated college. They got into the gaming industry. And so they started actually making games. And I got into like the film and TV production world. And I always had these ideas about like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool in a movie if you could be in the movie, or you could play, not only just be a top-down situation, can it be more interactive?
Right.
But like technology just wasn't there. So I completely like dropped it. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I can't do that. My friends make games. I make the movies and the TV stuff. And that's just how it is. And I feel like in this past like few years, those lines are starting to blur. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I think it's at the core of it, it's storytelling.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you can do that in a 2D linear fashion, or you can do it in a more gamified, interactive fashion. And I feel like I'm just so, fortunate and excited to be at it, building in a time that all this is possible.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that desire to be in the game. And I also played video games as a kid, and some of these like super old Nintendo games, like Contra, I played that a ton, and it's like, oh, I wish I could play that now. I wish my skin could be like Michael Jordan, for example. I could be whoever I wanted in this experience, reliving it, and so yeah, those lines. I think I think if people saw that, they would be super excited about that, and we're maybe far off from that. But it seems like, yeah, to your point, that there's just so much sort of blurring of the lines happening these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's from a nuts and bolts perspective. Making that jump from traditional production to metaverse building wasn't as crazy as you might imagine, because as far as like working with artists, working with project managers, working with clients to create something, it's just different tools with different artists. But at the end of the day, you still are starting with like an idea, a challenge, and you need to make something that's going to resonate with an audience. And it's just a matter of like planning that properly, working with the right people, and then delivering something that's going to like have that impact. And whether that can be a movie, a broadcast spot, or a Roblox experience, it's all the same stuff. Really, it's sort of like the core messaging is the same.
Right, like you're saying, storytelling at the end of the day, just different sort of like mediums, palettes to paint on. So talking about that, and I like how you're bringing in even like the operations part of it, right? Because there's like a creative part of it, but there's also just like project management and like working with clients and stuff like that. So how would you describe Sawhorse's approach to this space, both like from a, let's call it like a creative perspective, but also from that just like execution perspective as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to take like one step back. And when I got into this, we've only been in this metaverse and gaming space for about a year and a half. So it's totally new. And when we came into it, I never really looked at Roblox as like a gaming platform, and I never really looked at it as like a kids platform. For me, I saw it as a metaverse opportunity to build and tell a story by leveraging the tools that platform offers. So I didn't come, me and the rest of the team, we didn't come to it with a perspective of like, what are all the games on Roblox? How can I make another game on Roblox? That's not how we ever looked at it. For us, it was like, what tools can we leverage on this platform to tell a story? And I think that's where we have a kind of a fresh perspective and a more unique and possibly dynamic kind of take on the way we build experiences. And one interesting thing is like bringing that traditional film background into it is super unique. So what we're doing is like on the film side, we're taking real directors, producers, art directors, visual effects artists. These people are all in the film people. Then we're taking game designers, developers, like optimized 3D artists for metaverse building, and we put them together and build these teams, and we make these products. And so a lot of times there's headbutting because that whole workflow and that whole dynamic has not really been established, and it's not very clear. But over this past year and all the projects we've worked on, we've kind of started to create the clear roles and responsibilities and figured out the dynamic of how all of those talented people work together to produce really impactful results.
Yeah, and that seems like you're saying, a recipe for conflict, because it's like it's coming from different worlds, but also a recipe for magic, because it's just like you're putting things together that haven't been put together before.
Yeah. It's I think you just said it better. It is like magic when it comes together, and it's the headbutting is real, because you've got the gaming people saying like, what is this director? Who's a director? I don't work with directors. Like, no, the games work like this and it has to be like that. And then you've got on the film side being like, I don't care how the game works. I want the user to feel this thing, what I'm saying? And then there's some, argument that happens there, but then, over time, we're a very collaborative and open team. So we work hard to understand each other and figure out like, what is the best goal for the client? What is the best goal for the project? And then we kind of align on how we can work together and find the right elements to drop into a project so it feels good.
Yeah. And so want to kind of dig in a little bit further into that process. And if you could just share a little bit about maybe some examples of brands that you've worked with and what you've done with them, and maybe just like how this team, this collaboration has worked within that context, and maybe just like at the beginning, right? Because like I think at the beginning it's kind of wide open. Hey, we have I assume, right, we have a brand, we could do anything with them, and then that's kind of the point where it's sort of like wide open, blue sky, you can do anything.
Right. Yeah. That's what I love about it. That's what I'm so excited about is that there's not a clear roadmap for all of these, developers to follow or brands to follow to achieve a successful experience. I love to take 10 steps back and be like, brand, what do you want to achieve? What is your goal? What type of impact do you want to have? What are your KPIs and goals and a lot of times they don't necessarily have those ready to go. So kind of have to find them together. But once that's established and we realize we want to make this type of thing and we want it to have this type of impact, then we can just think outside the box to be like, well, what tools are available on the platform to create an experience that's going to make that happen? So for instance, like two projects that are really interesting that we worked on is first being the Alo Yoga project, which that was our first project we ever did on the platform. And we got to really think outside the box on that because it was like, okay, this is a mindfulness brand, a yoga brand, a clothing company. Like, how does that fit on a platform like Roblox? Like all these users are on the platform playing games. Why would they come meditate? Or why would you can't do yoga in a three-dimensional space. It's not VR. So like, how would you do it? So my team basically just dove in and thought outside the box and figured out like, how can we engage this audience in a way that is going to be meaningful for the brand? And so one, from an art direction standpoint, our artists went in and, studied the brand style and built an island that really fits with the brand and feels like the brand visually, audibly, and tonally. It is the brand in a three-dimensional space. So that was a very first start to the project. On top of that, we figured out what the brand does, beyond clothing. They have an app called Alo Moves that is like a mindfulness app. It's also like a yoga tutorial app. So there's tons of media that was pre-existing. So we thought, can we leverage that media and package it in a different way on Roblox so it can be experienced, because that's true to the brand. So for instance, the yoga tutorials, we put those up on a big screen. So in the experience, you can watch those. You can go to full screen if you want to. You can quickly follow along with the yoga tutorial and get the exercise yourself, or you can minimize it and you can be in the 3D space with your avatar and you can unlock, yoga emotes, yoga moves, and then participate with kind of like what the instructor is saying. And then the other element that was really interesting about that project was the guided meditation. And that was my favorite part because basically we got to work with the yogis at Alo. They did custom sessions with us. They recorded their audio, their guided meditations, and we were able to create a visual experience that went along with those that was customized. And then we were able to gamify that experience. So we would encourage users to come back and continue to meditate and continue to focus on mindfulness. And then by doing so, you would unlock different wearables and UGC gear. So, I mean, that's just a kind of a different perspective on how you would approach a project. Because I think what I'm seeing a lot in the space, which is a little disappointing, is, a brand will come to developers and they'll say, hey, what do I do here? And then the developer will just say, well, what you could do is just do this one core game loop, and then we'll just slap your brand on it, and then that'll be your world. And it's like, is that relevant to the brand? Is that carrying the brand's ethos into the space and leveraging what's possible to connect with those fans and those consumers? I would say no, it's a missed opportunity if you do that.
Right. And it seems like, I guess, as hearing you talk about this and your process and how you worked with Alo to go there and build that, it was really like a deep understanding of their brand and what it means, and it wasn't something that you figured out right away. Like you had to do the work. You had to like really go into their apps and like check out their content and look at their style guides and just every single thing that you could to like really become as expert on their own brand as themselves,
Yeah.
and then be able to then really translate it into that experience and really the multiple layers of that experience. And so, yeah, I think that the meditation, so the meditation specifically, it's just so jarring because it's like, oh, I can like close my eyes here playing this game. That's so unexpected. I don't expect to go do anything on a screen playing a game where I close my eyes. And so like, yeah, just even those little things are so impactful.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm so passionate about is like how can we create an experience for users? Think outside the box. What can be done with the platform, with the technology that really resonates with that brand and that brand ethos?
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the sort of gamification. I remember going into the Alo Sanctuary for the first time, and I passed by the big screen with the yoga instruction, and I was gonna go check it out, and then it was like, oh, you need a yoga mat in order to do this. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, obviously, yeah, I don't have a yoga mat. How am I gonna do this? And then it was like, oh, I went to the store. I was like, oh, you need to meditate, like to get your yoga mat. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm willing to do that. And then that brought me into that experience. And I think that the way that it was onboarding me into how to use the game, how to use the experience, how to be there, was done in a way that felt very like it just made a lot of sense. And so it didn't feel like, okay, here's the instructions of like how to play, right? Like, oh no, I saw this big screen. Like, let me do something. Oh, okay, I'll do this other thing. And then before I knew it, it was like, oh, okay, now I understand like what's going on. And it's as wild as it sounds, there's just so many experiences out there, especially brand experiences, where I'm like so clueless. Like, what am I supposed to do here? What's the purpose of this? Why? It's like, oh, there is no purpose. Okay, I'm gonna leave. This is terrible.
Right. Yeah, and that's one thing that like we've really tried to become better at over time is the user journey. It's just really like you start here and how do you educate them through the process and in a fun way that they fully understand what the purpose is and then they enjoy the process. And another thing that we love to do is incorporate like cutscenes that like are cinematic and explain what's happening. And that's definitely, we're leveraging our background there in production and post-production. So what we'll do is we'll script those and we'll work with like an editor and a cinematographer to go in and like create what those scenes would be like, adding voiceover and then just roll those out. And, I think they just do such a heavy lift for you, for the user when they first start an experience, because it just gives you like a basis of knowledge of like, oh, this is what this place is all about. This is what I'm supposed to do. And now I'm going to go do it. Because, yeah, I agree with you. I've been dropped into so many Roblox experiences and it's just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you're asking a lot of me right now. Like, either I'm going to leave or I'm going to go in some direction and I hope I get a clue for why I'm there. Otherwise, I'm going to leave.
Yeah. So when a brand comes to you, and let's say, I think you talked a little bit about like at the very beginning, you talked about, oh, what are their KPIs, helping them understand that. But so let's say you figure out, okay, hey, let's work together. So you're working with a brand. What is that process like? What are the things that the brand is responsible for that they might not even expect, right? Because all of a sudden it's like they're building a game and they've never done that before. And obviously you're the ones building the game. You're the ones having to do the heavy lifting. But what is that process like, do you think, for the brand as they work with you to build and then all the way to launch?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know there's a lot of brands and companies out there that are starting to bring on like a chief metaverse officer. Or they're hiring like younger people that get gaming to be advisors in the space. And I think that's really important because you have to understand who your audience is. And I think the reason why so many brands are getting into the space is because they're trying to access Gen Z and Gen A. And I feel like the purpose there is either two things. A, they're already creating products that are relevant to the audience, which is, obviously like, toy companies and animation producers that are creating, content for kids. And the other purpose is like to stay relevant. It's like you might be like a fashion brand and everyone knows you, but anyone who's under a certain age might not be watching TV. They might not ever go to any malls. They might not really have a connection to your brand. But if you can reach them at a younger age, you're just going to plant the seed that I'm a brand. I'm here. I have something to offer, and you're going to create those fans over time. So I think that really is the purpose.
So let's say some brands might have that expert, that dedicated person who can help interface with you and kind of report back to the rest of the company. Sometimes they might not have that person who's obviously there has to be somebody at running point, whether they want to or not, or whether they are experienced or not. What do you think for them? Like, just like, are they having to deliver you like style guides, assets, copy? How much of that is, I guess it depends, but how much of that is the brand versus your team kind of creating just even concepts and assets?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are very open and collaborative when we work with our clients. And ultimately, if you're talking about something like brand or branding, like it has to fit that brand.
Right.
So they're never going to just give you the keys to the city and go, hey, go make something. Like they need to see it and they need to say, hey, is this on brand? Can, like, if my CEO saw this, like, are we going to feel like this is right? Or is this going to be some crazy left field thing that's like going to cause problems? So at the very least, whoever's responsible from the brand side will be tracking the project and working with it throughout the whole thing. Like you said, giving style guides, reviewing work in progress, giving feedback, and then, being there for the launch. That's at the minimum. At the maximum is, like I said, if you have a chief metaverse officer or, like a gaming advisor on staff, that person can work with like the traditional brand manager. And then we'll all work together to create the vision for what the thing is. And the most advanced ones will come to you with specific KPIs and goals. They're like, great, we want to be on this platform. We want to achieve these things within the first 6 months. And we love this type of gamification. We want to leverage that. You guys can go make it. And that's great when we have that as a starting point. But I think the majority of the brands I work with are like kind of in the middle, where they this has been going on for a while now. So it's like it's not completely brand new at this point. There's lots of other activations and experiences that brands have built over the past few years. So there's a lot to study and learn from. So I'm feeling like the majority of the clients that come to us kind of get it a little bit, the space, and they kind of have some goals, but it's a teamwork kind of collaborative process to be like, okay, I hear what you guys want. Here's a bunch of background knowledge that we have. Let's kind of tailor this experience and create some fresh ideas or some things that push the envelope, or some experiential things that are going to engage your specific target audience. And we build that vision. And that's usually in the form of a deck. It's like a collaborative deck that we share.
Oh, interesting.
So we start to put it together like, hey, here's a description of like what we're doing. Here's how the core game loop works. Here's, all the UGC we're going to have. Here's some concept art of what the environment's going to look like. They're looking at it, giving notes. We're tweaking it. And we kind of like run with that document until release.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of anchor like what we're making. And it kind of gives the brand the opportunity to track what we're doing in real time. And so there's no surprises when it's like, okay, look at it. Are we good or not? It's like, no, they need to be like tracking with us in order to make sure that we're all on the same page on what we're building.
Yeah, nobody wants those surprises. Um, so you I get the sense like, hey, from ideation to execution of building these experiences, building these games, you're there every step of the way. But again, you mentioned that these are tied to KPIs, right? So whether the brand has them from in mind from the very start, or you're working and developing those along the way, I'm sure, right? It's related to visits, it's related to sort of reach, some sort of engagement, those types of sort of standard general measurement areas. And so, how much does Sawhorse as a company help and work on like the marketing aspects of these games? Because you could build a game, you could build a great game, but maybe nobody goes to see it. Like, how much are you thinking about and actually actively involved in, elements of getting the word out to sort of a broader audience about, that this even exists?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the whole concept of marketing on Roblox specifically is now a hot topic
Hmm.
where I think all the brands need to take it really seriously, because in the past they had the sidebar on the main page. And basically, from my understanding, if you were a brand and you came to the space and you were in contact with the platform, they would give you a placement on that sidebar. And that just drove so much traffic. And I think that, whether that brand had a marketing plan or not, they would leverage that, and it would drive millions of views and visits. So I think that a lot of brands weren't thinking about marketing as much in the past. Now that sidebar concept has been removed from the platform entirely. So, like you said, you can make an amazing experience, but it all comes down to the discovery process. Like, how are users going to find it? There's, I don't know, millions of experiences on Roblox.
Yeah.
I don't know the total number, but you're like lost in the crowd unless you have a way to drive traffic and market it. So the portal system is designed so that some of the top games have these little portal doors, and your avatar can just walk right into the portal, and it will take you into the experience that you own. So that's like a one strategy, but there's so many other strategies that can go into this, as far as like maybe it's a Discord server that is managing the community. Maybe it's partnering with like YouTube influencers, Roblox influencers, who are going to like go play your experience. I know on other platforms, Twitch is one of these strategies that people use. Accessing people via Twitter, paying for ads on TikTok and Instagram. I mean, there's a whole 360 marketing approach that brands need to take, and because that sidebar is gone, everyone needs to take that seriously. And I also think brands need to have basically two budgets. You need to have your production budget for the thing you're going to make, and you have to have your marketing budget, because it's extremely important. Like you said, Stephen, like, you don't want to make some amazing experience and no one knows about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that seems like, yeah, with the loss of that sidebar component, it's really, yeah, forcing brands to have to figure out this whole world of getting attention and driving traffic. So last question for you here. What would you say like the biggest lessons, that you've gained along the way working with brands in this space?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that I love is be bold, be risky, and push the envelope on leveraging this platform to create something unique that is going to resonate with your customers and your fans. That is, I think, one of the great benefits that a platform like Roblox offers. And if you're not trying to make something different or make something really impactful, you're kind of blowing it. So I would say like that's one thing. Another big thing is like you have to recognize where you're launching this. This isn't a commercial on TV that people are just watching and accepting. It's not a video on TikTok that you're scrolling through. You're coming into a community of users, in an experiential collaborative space, you're not going to drop an advertisement there, because it's, nobody wants that. These people, this community's been around for I think almost 10 years, maybe over 10 years, and they have expectations. They do things a certain way, and so understanding that community, working with that community, like for instance something that we did with the Elton John project is, we reached out to some of the top UGC creators, and they created all the clothing. So like they had a hand in the creative process of like what we were building, and they were part of that team, our team, building this amazing experience. So really understanding like what do those users want? How do they like to experience things? How do they want to be treated and talked to? And taking that all into account is extremely important. And then as well, like being specific and mindful of how can the experience be successful, leveraging all these learnings that we've taken over the past few years of like what works, what doesn't, really focusing on the ideas that are going to be successful, killing all the other ones that don't, and then watching the success after launch.
Very cool. Yeah, lots of lessons, and I'm sure lots more lessons to come along the way as you continue to work with awesome brands and build these experiences that are pushing the boundaries, like you're saying, that really are meant to make noise, grab attention. Thanks so much for joining. Would love to just give you a chance to let people know, if they want to find out more about Sawhorse, want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to look you up?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Sawhorse, just go to our website, which is just sawhorsela.com. And if you want to connect with me, just reach out on LinkedIn. My name is Nic Hill. I'll definitely respond, and I love making new connections. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Nic.
All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Very cool. That was a great conversation. Really appreciate Nic sharing his perspective. I think we were able to get to some really interesting details about really understanding brands. And for me, the key takeaway was really about thinking outside the box when coming to a platform like Roblox. And by bringing a variety of really different perspectives like Nic's done with his team, you can really bring a brand to life in a way that's super unique and captures players' attention, which is certainly the goal for all brands entering this space. All right, I hope you liked this episode. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, rate it, share it with your colleagues, other peers who might be trying to understand the space. And if you want to keep up with new episodes and learn more about how brands are activating on Roblox, please be sure to sign up for my Metaverse newsletter at my website, metaversemarcom.io. You can also find and connect with me, Stephen DiPianco, on LinkedIn. If you're interested in entering the space, especially if you're focused on entertainment and sports, please do reach out. All right, until next time, I'll see you in the Metaverse.